Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Kitchen time's going to be a quickie. Several people suggested with this manky Dracula that it needed repotting and the moss looked pretty grim. I agree. Again, things like this just go on under your nose and sometimes it needs somebody else to just point them out. I thought it's in moss. Well, that saves thinking about whether that leaf needs to come off or not. Dracula, I don't know whether it's pronounced chimera or chimera, but that's what it is. And let's see what we've got. I suspect most of this green is just algae, which you get on moss. And I don't remember for the life of me how I potted this. I just hope we've got some roots. See, this is just ordinary moss in here. It's only got it does smell a bit earthy, but you know, it's the algae that's making it look wrong. A little fern there. We don't need any more fern. I've taken up the floor in the grow space. Right, so what we've got inside all this moss is fundamentally dead roots. There's not much alive in amongst that lot, that's for sure. So in this media, in that open basket, since this was done, it hasn't grown any roots. I don't see any progress in the root department. Now, it could be that the assumption the moss had gone off and turned sour and was spoiling the plant was just not right, and that wasn't what was wrong. And there are a few new growths pushing up in places. I mean, this one's not, I think that one's rotted anyway. Yeah. And there's another one round here that looks better. And we've got manky leaves. It's not much of a base to a plant. These roots they're not good. Well, the bottom section of roots is coming off anyway. I can see they're broken in places. And then I've got to decide what else to do. There's just no sign of new roots. And it's been in that basket thing quite a while. So the next thing is, do we try it in a mix rather than just moss? Because that's all that was just moss. And I've got a feeling when I planted this, distant memory, I suppose I could go and find the video, but there's a bother factor there, and I can't be. These older central roots are just, these roots are just not good. There's not much alive on there. And that's, I think, what it looked like when it went in there. And I think what I did was I actually got some moss and actually wrapped the roots in it and then stood that inside the basket with some moss in the bottom. So that moss in the bottom is compacted quite badly. There's not a lot of air in there. But it smells earthy, but I don't think it's off as such. I'm not sure. Swings and roundabouts, sitting on the fence and all that. So what do we do with it? Do we just put it back in some more moss or try something a bit different? I know what I am going to do with it, because they annoy me, is get rid of all these stumpy bits which are where old leaves have fallen off. It doesn't help the appearance of the plant for a start. Tatty old sheaths and things from things that have long since gone. Taking care not to snip the top off my new growth. Yeah, I'll leave that one for that very reason. Pull it off instead. Right, that's sort of tidied up the base of the plant a bit, what little there is. Then we've got decisions to make. That leaf is not working. It's got too little green on to be of any use, so that can come off. That one's still got some green, so has that one. That one's still got some green on it. Why I worry about the green is that if a part of a leaf is still green, there is a likelihood it can still photosynthesize. That gives the plant some food. Yeah? So if I cut all 3 of those leaves off, it's got that left to photosynthesize with, which is next to nothing. So it loses that incoming energy food supply when these leaves are not fully functional. But even if they're only half functional, that's better than nothing. So I'm going to leave them on. And I think I'm just going to pop that up. Cool. I think I'm going to pop that up in a mix of moss and perlite this time. And try that. Quite a few people who grow Masdevallias like that mix. Some mix some charcoal in with it. Well, I haven't got any, so that option's out. I could try putting some bark in with it as well, but I don't see a lot of point. If I need some substance in with the moss, then the perlite will do that job. So anyway, I'll just get rid of this rubbish. That'll have to go out in the compost bin. It's too much to put in the kitchen bin. I do sneak things in there now and again. And I need a minder. I need somebody to take charge of my money. And then whenever I want to spend something, I have to go and ask. And somebody else has an input into the thought processes of whether I should spend that money or not. I was so bored this morning. I was looking at offers just going round. I did a lot of research first. It wasn't a snap decision. But I ended up buying a smart TV and an external soundbar to go with it this morning. There's quite a lot of money gone this morning. I also found a couple of orchids I liked and bought 2 new orchids as well. Somebody needs to take my money away. But when you're shut in all the time, I'm not spending anything on fuel. Or, you know, there's lots of other things I would normally spend some money on that I'm not. And I'm stuck in here. And what's the point of money in the bank? You can't enjoy it when it's in there. It has to come out and buy things to get some enjoyment. But I think I've been a bit heavy-handed on the spending today. Anyway, I'll get back when I've decided what this is going in, and we'll get it potted up or basketed up, because I think, quite honestly, it's probably going to go straight back in there unless I can find a smaller one. I will look. Right, I found a smaller little pot. I mean, the gaps in the basket only need to be big enough for the flower spike to escape, and quite honestly that had a solid bottom, which wasn't ideal, whereas this one's got holy bottom, which would be better if the spike comes straight down. If it was in the other pot, it would have had to have gone sideways to find an escape route, whereas this one, it can go straight down. Now my idea is to try and get some moss initially tight up on the underside of that plant. In fact, I'm going to break it up quite small to do that. I want to get the moss in contact with the base of the plant, try and encourage some root growth, plus if any roots do venture out, they're straight into something moist rather than you know what it's like, there's often air gaps when you pot things up. So I want to get this done first before I start messing about with perlite. So I'm just going to make sure that the base of the plant has got some moss right up in there, tangled up in the roots as a sort of start point. And we'll just put that down to one side, and then we can get some moss with some perlite mixed in. I'm not going to break this up too much. There's not a lot of point when you're doing this style. I normally break my moss up when I'm mixing it with bark, and the reason is that I want it evenly distributed throughout the pot. Well, as most of this in the pot is going to be moss, it will be evenly distributed because it's all moss. Right, there's my towel, dry my hands off. And then we'll have a go with this perlite. This actually came from the States. It was sent as a gift, so it's called sponge rock, stroke perlite. Now, if you talk to people in this country that don't go on the internet, Luddites, they won't have heard of sponge rock. They'll think it's something entirely different, you know, like rock wool or something daft. They get in the right muddle, whereas we all know that sponge rock is just giant perlite. That's all it is. Is that enough to get a good mix in there? Yeah, that'll do. But if you play with it, watch the dust. It is extremely damaging if you breathe it in, because it does not break down. So if you get some of that in your lungs, it ain't coming out. Well, unless you get this virus going around, of course, then you probably cough it out, but not recommended. So don't muck about with the dust. I mean, I've just taken a small handful out. I will now reseal the bag, keep the dust and everything else in until such time as I might use it again, which is very infrequently. And the pieces themselves don't really give off dust. It crushes or breaks. If you've got a big bit, you can break it into smaller bits. It's quite fragile or quite soft. But the pieces themselves don't tend to give off any dust, but the dust collects in the bottom of the bag, like there. You don't want to get playing around with that stuff, basically. That's just not good for you. Right, so we will get some of that in our pot. I'm going to keep this loose. When the guy, the specialist Mazda Value guy, gave his talk, he did a potting demo and he got his moss and he went like that. He said, that's it, that's all I do, no pressing down, no nothing. And then he stood his pot in it and went like that round the sides, and he left it like that. That's how his grow. Mind he keeps his humidity pretty damn high. I would imagine his greenhouse is metal or plastic, because if it was wood it would rot. Right, so that's not compressed in any shape or form, it's just flopped in there. And the idea is to tip that sideways so that I don't turn the plant upside down, and push the plant on top. Now I haven't lost my moss out of the base of the plant. And then I can put a bit more of this down the sides, and as I push down the sides, the roots will come away from the side of the pot and go into the moss. As you push the moss down the sides, the roots back up. Yeah, unlike bark where it would all mix in together. But not in this particular case. But I don't want this compacted to any great extent. This is why there's not going to be any pressing in the middle whatsoever. Alright, is the plant's reasonably secure now, so I think that will do for the mix. And I think what I'm just going to do now, we'll just put a bit more with the mix just around there loosely so that it comes up towards the top of the plant. And then what I'm going to do is top that up with just moss, so that around the base of the plant is just moss. We'll tuck that in there loosely. Over time, as I water, it will gradually compact, but not enough to remove the air from the root system, if we ever get one. Certainly haven't got anything any good in there now, but maybe this, just getting it out, putting it in some fresh moss, smaller pot, you know, that means it's going to dry quicker, which means it'll get, this is something else, I don't know whether I've ever explained this idea of even plants that need to stay moist, having a fast drying cycle might sound a daft idea, but it's not. Let's look at it like this. That moss holds an awful lot of water, an awful lot of water. So I pour water in there, it's absolutely dripping wet. Now, depending on how long it takes to dry, depends on the next time it's ever going to see any fresh water. So if that then takes 3 weeks to dry, it's had no fresh water. That wouldn't happen naturally in the wild, would it? Because it would get rained on. And that water refreshes the water round the roots constantly. So in the wild, they don't sit in water for any length of time. And even though that's fresh moss, if that stays wet for 2 or 3 weeks, the water in it's not fresh anymore, it's stale. It could even be deemed starting to go stagnant because it hasn't had any fresh stuff. So the faster it dries, in a sense, the better, as long as you don't let it get totally dry. Because first off, this moss is It's not as easy to wet if it's totally dry. That's why we pre-soak it before we use it. If it does totally dry, the easiest way to wet it is dunk it, quite honestly, and let it sit there for a bit. Which is exactly what we do, you know, prior to using it. So whether this is going to perk up or not, I haven't got a clue. And I've got far too much moss wet. Never mind. I should carry on using that label because it's what came with it. And it's readable. I think that the label might have been done by Lynn. She's got one of those gadgets where you put the letters in and it types a little sticky label which you can then stick on your plastic label and it doesn't fade like my writing does. So that's all I'm going to do with that, and we'll have to just wait and see if it kicks back into life. Certainly wasn't happy before. We'll see what happens, but this business of this moss now will probably be bordering on dry tomorrow, if not the next day, yeah, and then it will get fresh water. No feed, no point in feeding that at the moment, it's not growing, it will just get water. I don't think this hanger is now going to work, which is a shame. No, it's not. Never mind, we will find some other way. Quite honestly, it's not going to throw a spike out now, is it? So it can just sit in a tray for a bit until I can see some growth on it and some movement, and then we'll worry about whether a spike's going to come out the bottom or not. I don't think that's going to be happening for some time. Anyway, we'll get that back in the grow room. If I just leave it like that and put it on my mesh shelf, then if a spike does come out the bottom, it's not going to go straight into a drip tray. So we'll get away with it. I'll keep it like that for now, but certainly, you know, for the next month or more, I'll have to watch that one because that's going to dry an awful lot faster than some of the other stuff out there. And we'll see how it goes. It's got two choices. It can either start growing or it's going to die. It's not a lot in between with this one. I don't think it's going to sit there looking like that too much longer. It's already getting on my nerves. Anyway, thanks for dropping by. See you next time.